They say that trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and a lifetime to repair. But they never tell you what happens when the person who breaks it is the only one you ever truly trusted. My name is Clara. For 7 years, I thought I was living a real-life fairy tale. I had a man who loved me, or so I thought. His name was Julian. We met in college, back when we both had nothing but big dreams and empty pockets. We survived on cheap instant noodles, shared a tiny studio apartment where the heater barely worked, and spent long nights talking about the future we were going to build together. Julian was ambitious, and I loved that about him. When he decided to start his own architectural firm, I didn't hesitate. I emptied my entire savings account to give him his starting capital. I worked 2 jobs, coming home with aching feet and a tired smile, just so he could focus on his designs without worrying about rent. I was his assistant, his accountant, his cheerleader, and his partner. When his firm finally took off and the big contracts started rolling in, I cried tears of pure joy. We had made it. We were a team, or so I believed. The first shift was subtle. It always is. It starts with a phone call taken in the other room. A password suddenly appearing on a phone that used to lie open on the kitchen counter. Late nights at the office that were suddenly too intense for me to tag along. "You've worked so hard, Clara," Julian told me one evening, kissing my forehead with a warmth that felt increasingly hollow. "You deserve a break. Let me handle the new high-profile clients. I hired a new junior executive to help with the heavy lifting. You should focus on decorating our new house." At the time, I thought he was being caring. I thought he was rewarding me for the years of sacrifice. I didn't realize he was slowly, systematically pushing me out of the company I helped build. The junior executive was a woman named Evelyn. She was 10 years younger than me, sharp, glamorous, and always smelling of expensive French perfume. Whenever I dropped by the office, she was there, leaning over Julian's desk, laughing just a bit too loudly at his jokes. When I brought it up, Julian laughed it off. "Clara, honey, you're being paranoid," he said, wrapping his arms around me. "Evelyn is just an ambitious kid. She's helping me secure the milestone project. You know how important this contract is for our future. Don't let your insecurities get the better of you." I hated myself for feeling jealous. I forced myself to smile, to trust him, to swallow the heavy lump in my throat. I told myself that Julian loved me. We had a history. We had a foundation. But a foundation means nothing when the earth beneath it begins to slide. The turning point came on our 7th anniversary. I had booked a table at the restaurant where we had our very first date. A small, cozy Italian place. I spent hours getting ready, putting on the dress he always loved. I sat at that table for 3 hours. The candles burned down to stubs. The waiter kept giving me pitying looks. Julian never showed up. His phone went straight to voicemail. Panicked, thinking he had been in a terrible accident, I drove straight to the office. The building was dark, except for the top floor, Julian's executive suite. The cleaning staff had already left. The silence in the hallway was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own racing heartbeat. As I approached his office door, I saw a sliver of light spilling out onto the carpet. And then I heard it, laughing. A soft, intimate sound that didn't belong in a corporate boardroom. "Do you think she suspects anything?" a woman's voice asked. "Evelyn." "Clara?" "Please," Julian's voice replied, devoid of any of the warmth he usually used with me. It was cold, dismissive, almost mocking. "She's too naive. She thinks we're still those broke college kids. She doesn't fit into the world I'm entering now. Evelyn. The milestone project is going to put me on the map. I need a woman who matches that status. I need you." "And what about her share in the company?" Evelyn murmured. "I've already had the lawyers restructure the contracts," Julian said smoothly. "Legally, she's just an independent contractor whose services are no longer required. I'll throw her a small severance package to keep her quiet. By next week, she'll be completely out of my life." My hand froze on the doorknob. The world around me seemed to tilt violently. The air left my lungs, and for a moment, I thought I might collapse right there on the cold office floor. The man I had sacrificed everything for, The man I loved more than life itself wasn't just cheating on me. He was erasing me. He was discarding me like a piece of old, used furniture. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream or break the glass. Inside me, something far more dangerous happened. The profound, agonizing sadness that threatened to swallow me whole suddenly crystallized into a cold, hard, unyielding anger. He chose her over me. He thought I was weak. He thought I was naive. As I quietly turned around and walked out of the building into the pouring rain, I made a vow to myself. Julian thought he was entering a new world, but he had no idea that the world he built was about to come crashing down around him, piece by piece. He never saw my next move coming. The next morning, I woke up before Julian returned home. When he finally walked through the door at 8 a.m., smelling of strong coffee and that familiar French perfume, he looked tired but pleased with himself. "Clara, babe, I am so sorry about last night," he began, his voice dripping with rehearsed regret. He rushed over to me, trying to take my hands. The milestone presentations ran until dawn. The investors flew in unexpectedly from New York. I tried to call you, but my battery died. I feel absolutely terrible. Looking at him, I realized what a master manipulator he was. If I hadn't stood outside his office the night before, if I hadn't heard those chilling words with my own ears, I probably would have believed him. I would have comforted him. Instead, I forced a soft, understanding smile. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. "It's okay, Julian," I said softly, keeping my voice perfectly level. "I understand. The milestone project is everything to you. I was just worried about you. I'm just glad you're safe." He blinked, visibly relieved that I wasn't making a scene. "You are amazing, Clara. Seriously, the best. I promise I'll make it up to you." "Don't worry about it," I replied, turning away so he wouldn't see the flash of fire in my eyes. "Take a shower. You have a big week ahead." Over the next few days, I played the part of the perfect, oblivious partner. I made his breakfast, ironed his suits, and nodded sympathetically whenever he complained about how stressed he was. But behind the scenes, I was a woman possessed. The old Clara, the one who trusted blindly, was gone. In her place was someone focused entirely on survival and justice. I knew I couldn't just walk away and sue him. Julian was right about one thing. He had been smart with the legal paperwork. Over the last year, under the guise of simplifying taxes, he had transitioned the company's primary assets into an umbrella corporation where my name was nowhere to be found. If I walked into a courtroom right now, I would be outgunned by his high-priced lawyers, and I would walk away with nothing. To defeat an enemy who thinks they are chess masters, you don't flip the board. You play the game better than they do. I started by taking stock of what I still had access to. Since I had managed the company's accounts in the early days, I still possessed the master backup digital keys to the old financial servers. Keys Julian had forgotten existed because he had migrated to a new system. However, the old system still archived historical data and internal communications from the transition period. Every day, while Julian was at the office with Evelyn, I sat in our home study, systematically downloading years of financial records, emails, and project files. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Julian wasn't just trying to cut me out. He was actively committing corporate fraud to secure the Milestone Project. The Milestone Project was a massive, multi-million-dollar government contract to build a state-of-the-art public cultural center. To win the bid, Julian's firm had to prove they met strict environmental and safety regulations, as well as financial stability markers. According to the hidden files, Julian's firm was actually facing a massive hidden deficit due to bad investments he had made without my knowledge. To mask this, he and Evelyn had been falsifying their quarterly earnings reports. Even worse, to keep their project bid artificially low and highly competitive, they had secretly altered the engineering blueprints for the Milestone Project, substituting the high-grade, sustainable materials promised in the public proposal with substandard, cheap alternatives that could compromise the building's structural integrity years down the line. They weren't just betraying me. They were building a public safety hazard out of pure greed. My hands shook as I stared at the altered blueprints on my screen. This wasn't just a personal heartbreak anymore. This was a crime. Suddenly, the phone on the desk buzzed. It was a text message from a private investigator I had hired using cash from an emergency fund I kept hidden. The message contained a link to a private digital gallery. I clicked it open. There were dozens of photos of Julian and Evelyn, walking hand in hand through high-end boutiques, laughing over champagne at rooftop bars, entering a luxury penthouse apartment that Julian had recently leased using company funds. The timestamp on one of the photos was from the exact hour I had been sitting alone at the restaurant on our anniversary. A tear slipped down my cheek, but I quickly wiped it away. I didn't feel sadness anymore. I felt an icy, profound clarity. Julian wanted a woman who matched his new status. He wanted to step onto the grand stage of success with Evelyn by his side, leaving me in the dust. He thought he was playing a game of chess where I was just a pawn to be sacrificed. What he didn't realize was that I had already studied his every move. I knew his strengths, I knew his weaknesses, and most importantly, I knew his secrets. The trap was set, and all I needed to do now was wait for him to spring it himself. The atmosphere in our house grew increasingly tense over the next 2 weeks, though I did my best to maintain the illusion of absolute normalcy. I was waiting for him to make his move, knowing it would be the catalyst for mine. It happened on a Thursday evening. Julian came home later than usual. He didn't take off his coat. He didn't kiss me. He just stood in the living room, looking at me with an expression that was detached, professional, and completely devoid of emotion. "Clara, we need to talk," he said, taking a seat across from me. I sat down calmly, crossing my hands in my lap. "Of course, Julian. What's on your mind?" He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope, sliding it across the coffee table toward me. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. "I'm going to be completely honest with you," he began, leaning back, trying to project an aura of absolute control. "Our relationship hasn't been working for a long time. We've grown apart. We want different things out of life. I've realized that I need to focus entirely on my career and the direction the company is heading." "I see," I replied, my voice completely flat. "And what is in the envelope?" "Those are separation papers, along with a severance agreement from the firm," Julian said, not even blinking. "Since you helped out in the early stages, I'm offering you a lump sum of $50,000. In exchange, you will sign over any residual claims to the company name, properties, or future profits. You'll also need to vacate this house by the end of the month."
$52,000.
For 7 years of my life, my entire life savings, my sleepless nights, and the backbone of his entire empire. It was an insult. It was a slap in the face designed to make me feel small and powerless. "50,000? I murmured, looking up at him. "Julian, we built this company together. My savings started it." Julian sighed, a look of mild irritation crossing his face, as if he were dealing with an annoying child. "Clara, let's be realistic. You did some administrative work at the beginning, but I am the visionary. I am the architect. I am the one who secured the clients and brought in the millions. Legally, your name isn't on the corporate board. If you try to fight this in court, you will lose and you'll end up with nothing after legal fees. Take the money. Start a little boutique or something. Move on." "Is there someone else, Julian?" I asked, wanting to hear him lie to my face one last time. He didn't hesitate.
"No.
"This is strictly about us and about business. I just need space to breathe." The lie was so effortless it was almost impressive. I looked down at the papers, pretending to hesitate. I knew that if I refused to sign right now, he would unleash his legal team to freeze me out immediately, which might complicate my timeline. I needed him to believe he had won completely. I needed him to feel absolutely invincible over the next 48 hours. "If I sign this right now," I said, looking into his eyes, "will you at least leave me in peace until the end of the month?" "Of course," Julian said, a triumphant gleam appearing in his eyes. He quickly pulled a pen from his pocket and handed it to me. "I don't want any bad blood between us, Clara. It's just business." With a steady hand, I signed the documents. I watched as he greedily snatched them back, checking the signatures with a satisfied smirk. He had no idea that the document he was holding was entirely irrelevant compared to what was coming. He thought he had just closed the easiest deal of his life. "Thank you for being mature about this," Julian said, standing up and grabbing his briefcase. "I'll stay at a hotel for the next couple of weeks to give you your space to pack. Take care of yourself, Clara." He walked out the door without looking back once. The moment the front door clicked shut, the heavy silence of the house enveloped me. I stood up, walked over to my laptop, and opened the final files I had prepared. The next 48 hours were going to be the most important days of Julian's life. It was the weekend of the Grand Milestone Gala, the massive public event where the city council was officially going to announce Julian's firm as the winner of the historic contract. Every major media outlet, investor, and city official would be in attendance. Julian and Evelyn had spent months planning this night, viewing it as their ultimate coronation into high society. I looked at the photos of Julian and Evelyn, then at the fraudulent financial documents, and finally at the compromised blueprints. "It's just business, Julian," I whispered to the empty room. I hit send on 3 separate emails. One to the City Ethics Committee, one to the State Department of Building Safety, and one to the lead investigative journalist at the city's largest newspaper. Attached to each email were the complete, unedited, encrypted server logs proving everything. The fuse was lit. Now it was time to watch the fireworks. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of glittering chandeliers, expensive champagne, and high society chatter. It was Saturday night. The banners draped along the walls read, "The Milestone Project, shaping the future of our city." I stood across the street, shielded by the shadow of a large stone archway, wearing a simple dark coat. Through the massive glass windows of the hotel, I could see the event in full swing. There they were, Julian and Evelyn. Julian looked sharp in a bespoke tuxedo, his hair perfectly coiffed, a glass of champagne in his hand as he rubbed shoulders with city council members and wealthy developers. Evelyn was by his side, wearing a stunning emerald green gown that practically screamed opulence. They looked like the ultimate power couple. They were laughing, clinking glasses, basking in the adulation of a crowd that believed they were looking at the future of architecture. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Marcus, the investigative journalist I had emailed 48 hours ago. "The authorities have verified the server logs and the altered safety blueprints. The state prosecutor has signed off. The city council has pulled the plug. It's happening right now. Are you watching?" I didn't reply. I just kept my eyes fixed on the ballroom windows. Inside, Julian was called up to the podium. The crowd erupted into loud applause as he walked up the steps, adjusting his microphone with the easy confidence of a man who believed the world belonged to him. "Thank you, everyone," Julian's voice echoed through the speaker system, drifting slightly out into the street. "This night represents the culmination of years of dedication, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. The Milestone Project isn't just a building. It's a promise to this city, a promise of safety, sustainability, and integrity." As the word integrity left his mouth, a sudden commotion began at the back of the ballroom. The heavy double doors swung open. A group of 4 individuals in dark suits, accompanied by 2 uniformed police officers, marched directly into the hall. The crowd's chatter began to die down, replaced by confused whispers. Julian paused at the podium, a slight frown wrinkling his forehead. If the security staff could please assist our late guests." The lead investigator, a stern-looking woman with a federal badge pinned to her lapel, walked straight down the center aisle toward the stage. She didn't look at the crowd. Her eyes were locked onto Julian. Evelyn stepped forward from the VIP table, her face tightening with anger. "Excuse me, what is the meaning of this? This is a private event." The investigator ignored her completely, stepping up onto the stage and presenting a formal document directly to Julian. The microphone caught her words, broadcasting them clearly across the entire ballroom. "Mr. Julian Vance? I am Special Agent Miller from the State Regulatory and Anti-Fraud Division. I am serving you with an immediate emergency injunction. Effective immediately, your firm's bidding license has been suspended, and all corporate assets have been frozen pending a criminal investigation into corporate fraud, grand larceny, and public safety endangerment. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Julian's face drained of all color. He looked like he had just been struck by lightning. What? What are you talking about? This is a mistake. My firm is completely compliant. We won the bid fairly. We have received verified internal server data, altered engineering blueprints, and financial records detailing systemic falsification of records over the past 18 months. Agent Miller replied coldly, her voice echoing through the room. The City Council has officially rescinded the Milestone contract. You and your associate, Ms. Evelyn Carter, are required to accompany us for immediate questioning. 2 police officers stepped onto the stage, moving toward Julian. The crowd erupted into absolute chaos. Camera flashes began to explode rapidly as journalists, who had been tipped off earlier, rushed toward the stage, their lenses capturing every second of Julian's humiliation. I watched through the glass as Julian looked around the room frantically, his desperate eyes searching for a savior, an escape route, anything. But there was nobody. The high society friends who had been clinking glasses with him seconds ago were already backing away, turning their faces to avoid being associated with him. Evelyn was pale, her hands shaking as an officer informed her of her rights. She looked at Julian, her eyes wide with terror and sudden fury. Julian, what did you do? You told me everything was handled. You said she couldn't touch us. Julian didn't answer. His gaze swept across the chaotic room, and for a fleeting second, he looked out the massive glass windows, toward the dark street where I was standing. He couldn't see me in the shadows, but I could see him. I raised my hand slightly, a quiet, parting gesture to the man who thought I was too weak to survive without him. He chose her. He chose greed. He chose betrayal. And in doing so, he had built his entire empire on a foundation of sand. Now the tide had come in. The fallout was swift, devastating, and entirely public. Within 48 hours, Julian's architectural firm was a ghost town. The news of the compromised blueprints and the financial fraud dominated the local headlines. The investors who had poured millions into his company pulled out overnight, launching their own lawsuits to recover their funds. The grand empire Julian had dreamed of building didn't just collapse. It vanished as if it had never existed. Because the fraud involved government contracts and public safety violations, the legal consequences were severe. Julian and Evelyn spent months in courtrooms, their names dragged through the mud, their faces plastered across every news channel as symbols of corporate greed. In the end, Julian lost everything. The luxury penthouse, the expensive cars, the status he had craved so desperately. All of it was seized to pay off the massive fines and legal debts. Evelyn, realizing that Julian was a sinking ship, turned on him completely during the trial, trying to pin the entirety of the financial fraud on him in exchange for a lighter sentence. Their relationship, built entirely on ambition and betrayal, shattered under the first sign of pressure. A few weeks after the dust had settled, I was sitting in a quiet, sunlit cafe on the edge of the city. I had used some of my own independent savings to secure a small, beautiful office space. I was starting fresh, consulting for local community development projects, real work, built on real foundations. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. Usually I would ignore it, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello," I said. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. The sound of heavy, ragged breathing. And then, a voice I barely recognized. It was hollow, exhausted, and broken. "Clara." It was Julian. I didn't hang up. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel the need to gloat. I just felt an overwhelming sense of peace. "Hello, Julian," I said, my voice completely calm. "It was you, wasn't it?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "The server You were the only one who had the old access codes. You ruined me, Clara. I have nothing left. I'm facing years of community service. My license is permanently revoked, and I'm completely bankrupt. Why did you do it? After everything we were to each other?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, looking out at the people walking by the cafe, enjoying the beautiful morning. I didn't ruin you, Julian, I said softly, but firmly. You ruined yourself. You chose to commit fraud. You chose to compromise the safety of hundreds of people just to save your ego. And you chose to look at a woman who sacrificed 7 years of her life for you and decide she was worth nothing more than a $50,000 insult. I made a mistake, he choked out, a sob escaping his throat. I was blind, Clara. Evelyn. She didn't care about me. The moment things went bad, she blamed me for everything. I lost the company. I lost my career. I lost you. Please, Clara. Can we just talk? Just one meeting? There's nothing left to talk about, Julian, I replied. You told me yourself that night in the living room. Our relationship ended a long time ago. You told me it was just business. Clara, please. Goodbye, Julian, I said quietly. I lowered the phone and blocked the number. As I sat there in the warmth of the sun, I realized something profound. Revenge isn't about matching the cruelty of the person who hurt you. It's not about screaming, shouting, or causing destruction. True justice is simply pulling back the curtain and letting the world see exactly who they are. It's about forcing them to sleep in the bed they made for themselves. Julian thought he was playing a brilliant game when he chose her over me. He thought he was stepping up into a grand new life, leaving the past behind. But he forgot the most important rule of architecture and of life. You can build the tallest, most beautiful tower in the world, but if you build it on a foundation of lies and betrayal, it takes only one single truth to bring the whole thing crashing down. I smiled, closed my laptop, and stepped out into the world. A world that was finally truly mine.